everybody! In today's video, I'm going to share with you how I prepared for my system design interview for Amazon. If you haven't watched my video on my interview experience with Amazon, make sure you check it out. In this video, I'm going to share with you three things. First, all the concepts that I think are absolutely necessary to know for your system design interview. Second, I will share all the resources that I use for my preparation. Third, I will share with you my methodology or my approach to preparing for this interview, and I will also give you some free resources for practicing your mock interviews and give you some tips on whiteboarding. Okay, now let's look at the concepts. First, load balancers. You need to have basic understanding of what is a load balancer and what are some algorithms used for load balancing. For example, round robin or weighted round robin. For this interview, you don't have to worry about the implementation of those algorithms. Second one, caching. You need to know what is caching and what are some algorithms used for caching. For example, LRU, least recently used, or LFU, least frequently used algorithms. Again, you don't need to worry about the implementation of these algorithms for this specific interview. Third, database. You need to have basic understanding of SQL and NoSQL databases. You need to know when to use SQL databases and when to use NoSQL databases. What are the asset properties of the SQL databases? And most importantly, you should know database sharding. How to choose the sharding keys so that your data is evenly distributed across the different database servers. What is master database and what is slave database? How do you replicate the data between master and slave database? If you want to know more about it, make sure you check out this video. If you are designing a social media platform, you also need to know how will you handle celebrity users. How will you store their data and generate their feed? They're going to have a lot more followers and posts than other users. I'm going to repeat one more time just because I want to emphasize on this topic. Make sure you know SQL and NoSQL databases and when to use which database. You also need to know different sharding techniques and master and slave databases and how to do data replications. The next one is horizontal scaling and vertical scaling. You can find more information about horizontal and vertical scaling in this video. I also talk about pros and cons of horizontal or vertical scaling in this video. The next is single point of failure. You need to understand what is a single point of failure and how to avoid it in your system design. You do not want to design a system where you have one component. If that fails, your entire system goes down. So this is definitely an important concept, and I have also covered that in my database replication video. The next one is CDN, Content Delivery Network or Content Distribution Network. CDN is an important concept when you're trying to scale your system. So make sure you check out this video where I talk in detail about content delivery networks. The next one is CAP theorem. Now this is one of the very important concepts for system design. C stands for consistency, A for availability, and P for partition tolerance. Consistency means every read request will get the most up-to-date data or they will get an error. Availability means every read request will get some response. Partition tolerance means system will continue to operate even if there is a communication break between two nodes. In real-world system, you have to choose two of these three properties. In distributed systems, you will always have partition tolerance. So you have to choose between CP and AP systems, depending on your use case. For example, if you are designing a banking system, it is extremely important that your users see their most up-to-date balance at all times. They must see consistent information, whether they're logging in from their cell phone or they're logging in from their desktop. So in this case, you will select a CP system. If you are designing a social media platform, availability is a lot more important. In this scenario, it is completely okay if one user sees a post from a friend an hour later. You also have to know three types of consistencies: strong consistency, weak consistency, and eventual consistency. The next one is publisher-subscriber or the messaging queues. You need to have basic understanding of publisher-subscriber model and how to use the messaging queues. Next one is Elasticsearch. You need to have basic understanding of how Elasticsearch works. For example, if you are given to design an e-commerce website, you need to have the efficient search functionality. The next one is monolithic architecture versus service-oriented or microservices architecture. In monolithic architecture, you have this one big giant system that takes care of all the functionality. While on the other hand, on the microservices architecture, you will have smaller systems. each system serving one single functionality. For example, in your e-commerce website, your order system will take care of just orders versus the delivery tracking system will take care of just the tracking of deliveries. Okay, the next one is APIs. I will give a lot of emphasis on this one because in your system design interview, I highly recommend that you define your APIs. I'm not saying you have to design or implement those APIs, but you need to be able to define what are the input parameters for your API and what kind of results will your API return. You should also know post, put, get, or delete methods for your APIs. Okay, the next one is capacity estimation. I highly emphasize on this particular point because you must do a capacity estimation in your system design interview. You should know how to calculate storage capacity, what is QPS, query per second for peak hours, and it is nice to know how to calculate the bandwidth. Okay, so when I was doing my preparation, I found this a little tricky. I would pick up a calculator and try to do all sorts of calculation and end up wasting a lot of times. And then I learned a lot of tips and tricks that help me carry out these calculations very, very easily. In the next video, I'm going to share with you all the tips for capacity estimation. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Now we are going into the second part of the video where I am going to share with you all the resources that I use for my preparation. First one, YouTube videos. Yes, I started my interview preparation with YouTube videos. But as I read more books and I learned more about it, I realized that that was not enough. It was not giving me a clear picture of what was expected from these interviews. The first book I would recommend is System Design Interview, a book by Alex Su. I've added the link for that book in the description below. This book is really good if you want to have a deep understanding of all the system architecture components. The second book I would recommend is Grokking the System Design Interview. Now, I have not been able to find the hard copy of this book. I read this book online on educative.io. Again, the link is in the description below. The membership for educative.io starts from $200 a year or $60 a month. I personally think it's a little bit expensive, but if you have friends who are also interested in reading technical books, then you can sign up for a team membership and get some group discounts. I would recommend this only if you are interested in doing some technical readings. If you want to read this book only for one interview, then I would recommend looking at the free chapters available on their website. Now we are entering into the third part of the video where I am going to share with you how I approach my preparation. Like I mentioned earlier, I started with watching YouTube videos and then I switched into reading books. So when I finished reading a chapter, I would take the title or the problem we solved and try to do a system design on a piece of paper by myself. And when I was doing that, I realized that I was forgetting certain important keywords. For example, if you are reading about web crawler for the first time, chances are you're going to forget certain components that you read for the first time. For example, URL frontier. If you forget URL frontier in web crawler, you're going to have a hard time explaining your design to your interviewer. So I created some flashcards. On the left side, I have listed some important components, and on the right side, I have listed algorithms and other topics that I should bring up and explain it to my interviewer. Now, I would not recommend remembering the entire system design the way it is explained in the book, because your interviewer is gonna give you different scenarios where the exact design that you read in those books will not be applicable. So I highly encourage you that you focus on understanding the concepts rather than remembering the exact system design the way it is explained in the books. But like I said, having these flashcards that says what kind of information should you be covering in which system design interview is extremely helpful. In one of the next videos, I'm going to share what are the important topics that you should cover in which system design interview questions. So make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Now, let's say you know all of these concepts and you're ready for your interview, but it is extremely important to conduct your interview in the right way. You will have only 30 to 40 minutes, so you want to use your time carefully and make sure you're able to complete a decent system design in that time frame. So I would highly recommend that you do some practice interviews. For my mock interviews, I use pram.com. Now, this video is not sponsored by them, but this website came in very, very handy for me for preparing for my mock interviews, behavioral or system design interviews. It is a really good resource where you can practice unlimited free mock interviews. Here is how it works. I will book my mock interview and the website will pair me up with somebody who's also looking for doing the similar type of interview at the same time. For the first part of the interview, I will be the interviewer and I will ask questions to the other person. In the second part of the interview, the other person will be my interviewer and ask me the question. At the end of the interviews, we will provide each other with the feedback on what we did well and what we can improve on. The website will provide interview questions that you will ask each other. They also provide you a text editor. But if you're doing a system design interview, I recommend using a whiteboard than a text editor. I personally used Excalibur and I recommend you do that too. And I'll talk about it a little bit later in the video. Right now, let me tell you how to get free unlimited interviews on pram.com. At the end of the interview, you will receive a feedback form. As long as you keep filling out all the details on this form, you will keep getting unlimited free interviews. If you don't fill out the feedback completely, then you will only have 3 or 4 free mock interviews. Now let's talk about the whiteboards. Which whiteboard should you use in your interview? If you have your interview in next week or 2, then you should use whichever whiteboard you use for practicing. You don't want to change your whiteboard at the end moment and in the interview sit down in front of your interviewer and struggle on how to use the new whiteboard. If you have time to practice or you don't have a particular whiteboard in mind, then I would recommend using Excalibur. I've added the link for that whiteboard in the description below. One of the main reasons I like to use Excalibur is because of their libraries. I downloaded these 2 libraries and used the symbols like load balancers, servers, databases, etc. in my system design. Using the right symbol makes your design look a lot more professional, and it's much easier for your interviewer to grasp your design in a matter of seconds. I think I've given a lot more information in this video. Make sure you go over this video 1 or 2 times just to make sure that you have captured all the points that I was sharing with you. And I really hope that this comes in handy for your interview preparation. Make sure to hit the notification bell and subscribe for more great videos coming your way.